If I asked you who once said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," would you be able to tell me? Or how about this one? Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Or how about I have a dream? I bet you didn't know you'd be getting a quiz today, but here we are. And if you're an American, then these should be pretty easy for you. The first one being Neil Armstrong when he first stepped on the moon in 1969. The second one is Franklin D. Roosevelt addressing a rattled nation after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And lastly, arguably most famously, Martin Luther King Jr. told a divided nation his dream of one day being a united one. Now these are pretty easy, so let's try one more. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now some of you know this one, but it's okay if you don't. King David penned this poem in the book of Psalms about 3,000 years ago. And it's not at all a stretch to put this psalm, Psalm 23 to be exact, alongside some of the greatest syllables, sentences, and speeches ever uttered in human history. In fact, one could easily make the case that these 6 verses in the Bible make up the most impactful, most enduring piece of literature of all time. It's been recited at hundreds of thousands of funerals in order to bring people comfort. It's been referenced in countless pieces of music, both secular and sacred, to express pain, encourage contentment, and more. And an unimaginable number of hours have been spent writing about these 6 verses by scholars throughout history. The influence of Psalm 23 really cannot be overstated, and while I'd love to talk about the entire thing today, there's really no way. It's like, you know when people get excited about a subject like cars or sports or books or whatever else they're into, and after talking for what feels like 30 straight minutes about their hobby without taking a single breath, they say something like, "Well, I could talk about this all day." Yeah, Psalm 23 is like the ultimate "we could talk about this all day" piece of scripture. Oh, and as a quick tip for those of us who really don't want to talk about something all day with someone else, you're out there, it's okay to admit. Whenever you go to a party or a wedding or something like that, you need to develop what my wife and I used to call an abort signal. It's kind of like a secret SOS. Agree with your spouse, your friends, your kids, whoever you came with, on a secret signal to give to one another in the event that you get trapped in a conversation that you really don't want to be in. Maybe make some sort of intentional ear scratch signal like this. Or rub your hands through your hair. I do this already anyway. You know, something obvious but not too obvious. So when your plus one sees it, they can come to you and say, "Hey, your mom's been trying to call you. She needs you to call her back. It seems serious." Boom. Easily out of the conversation, able to move on. Free tip on the house. You can thank me later. All joking aside, we really can't talk about all of Psalm 23 because we just don't have the time. Which, ironically enough, is what I want to spend some time discussing today. Because we all feel like that, don't we? We just don't have any time. Especially as the school year begins, our calendars fill up with sports and dance, band, everything else. The parents among us essentially take on second jobs as chauffeurs for their kids. Their vacations become a distant memory, and life comes at a frenetic, unrelenting pace. Fall brings what feels like a new level of busyness to our lives, but it's not really new, is it? Most of us live our whole lives at a blistering pace. I mean, think about it. If you were fortunate enough to take a vacation this summer, what's the first thing you probably thought about once you decided where you were going? Well, what are we going to do while we're there? Who are we going to go see? Where are we going to eat? How are we going to spend all of our time? How are we going to watch all these kids? And before you know it, you're right back where you were before the vacation. Calendar full, running all over the touristy town that you're in to get everything done. And when you get back, you think to yourself, "Man, I could really use a vacation." See, most of us live our lives airtight, donating every available second to doing this, that, or the next thing. And to be fair, we have to do some of this to a degree. Things like work and meetings and after-school activities, outings with friends or family, they're often necessary and they're good, except the meetings. But it's also exhausting, right? It's so easy to get swept up by our never-ending to-do list that we often forget that we're just tired. I swear my wife, who's been such an amazing mother and champion for our 2 children, literally lives her life in a perpetual state of tiredness. It'll be like 9 a.m. and she's ready for a nap. And of course she's not going to get it because our kids need her. Oakland, my daughter, needs to be dropped off at preschool. Luca, my son, is still a baby, so he needs 24/7 surveillance. Megan works the evening shift later that day, so it's looming in the horizon. These are all things that she has to do, and none of it's bad. Actually, most of it's a joy. But it's still time devoted to doing the next thing or taking care of someone else. And without any sort of break or pause or peace, she'll never get the rest that she needs. The rest she was designed to need. Neither will you. I think on a spiritual level, we all know this. And I know some of you don't consider yourself spiritual, but you are, whether you recognize it or not. But we can all feel it deep within ourselves. And I think this is why Psalm 23 appeals to us so much, specifically the opening verse. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. The thought of being able to lie down and be still and being restored, it's extremely desirable to most of us because we very rarely get any of that, and yet we know we need it. Our hearts want it. Our soul longs for it. Now, there are a lot of reasons why we can't seem to slow down, but one of the most prominent ones is the idea that our culture has taught us, that you're either grinding and getting things done all the time, or you're missing opportunities or slacking. You're going to get left behind if you're not always outpacing or outworking, outdoing everyone around you. I read a quote the other day that said, "Grind while they rest, and you will live like they dream." And this seems noble and admirable, and of course there is something good to be said for a great work ethic. We ought to work hard, but to work or play or schedule hard all the time at the expense of rest will lead you to breaking in one way or another. Your physical, spiritual, and mental health will take the hit if you refuse yourself the time and space to rest. You know, they don't call it grinding for nothing after all. When things grind together long enough, they always break. David knew this. His life was on track to include everything but rest. I'm not going to recount his whole life for you today, but from about the time he was a teenager until he passed away after being king for 40 years, David must have struggled to find time to rest. But when we read his story, we can see that he understood how critical it was to slow down. He felt close to God when he took time to rest. More on that in a moment. See, David knew that more than making us feel less tired, rest was woven into our DNA by God himself. God showed us what it looks like when he created everything in 6 days and rested on the 7th. On top of that, God commanded us to do the same thing. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. God, who is the only one among any of us who doesn't need rest, did it during creation. Why? Because he knew that we'd need it since we're not him, since we're not God. So like he often does, he modeled rest for us first. And that's the thing. We don't just need rest because we're tired and we need to recover, although that is part of it. More than that, whenever we go and don't give ourselves any time to slow down, we often don't give ourselves time to connect with God. We know that God is the giver and sustainer of all life, including yours. And when we don't move stuff out of the way and rest, God's voice gets drowned out by the noise. His presence gets harder to feel among the stress and the anxiety, and eventually we might even start to feel like he's not near us or not with us anymore and get turned off to God, all because we fail to slow down and rest. What's funny, well, not funny necessarily, But it seems like this is a uniquely adult issue, meaning we adults struggle the most with making this kind of room in our lives. When we're kids and teenagers, we usually have no problem taking time to rest and relax. Now, I understand that part of it is because we have significantly less responsibility during this time in our lives, and I also realize that we don't always leverage our rest in the most productive ways when we're teenagers. Now, that's a different conversation for a different day. But there's no doubt that we're just better at it when we're younger. Truthfully, we have a much easier time letting some of the responsibility we have wait for a little while longer. And that's really not a bad thing. Take this lake, for example. This isn't just some random dock or no-name lake to me. This is Lake Randolph in Powhatan County, Virginia. And just a mile or so down the street from the house I grew up in, the one my parents still live in today. Now, I couldn't tell you just how much time I've spent right here. Parties, cookouts, random afternoons with the boys, church events. I spent so much time at this lake when I was growing up. However, more than the loud, rambunctious, semi-dangerous fun I used to have here with my friends during the day, it was the nights I came here alone that meant the most to me. Oftentimes on the way home from a friend's, I'd drive right past my own house, come here, hop over the fence, and just lie on this dock. To get away from the noise, the lights, and put the next day's to-do list in the back of my mind. It was therapeutic for me. And I'd just stare up into the night sky, marveling at the stars above, considering just how mighty God would have to be in order to create it all. And most of the time, it'd only be about a half hour or so, and then I'd head home. That's all I needed to feel relief. And it would be a bit inauthentic to say that I knew exactly why it felt so good to be alone on this dock then, but when I look back, I know that those moments were precious because I was able to set aside everything else and focus exclusively on God and His magnificence. I quit worrying about what was next. I stopped stressing about the agenda. I gave up for a few moments trying to outpace or outgrind everyone else and just rested, soaking in God's marvelous creation and allowing it to spur on thoughts of Him and His greatness. Now, there were several things that I could have been doing with this time, good, important things. But somehow I understood then that the time spent on this dock was more important. Of course, as it often goes, I can't remember the last time I laid on this dock and looked at the night sky. In fact, I can't remember the last time I appreciated the night sky at all, much less alone out here. At the same time, I could rattle off the last 100 moments in my life right now when I've been stressed about my schedule, worried about the future, and exhausted because of it all. And I don't think I'm alone either. When's the last time you took some time to rest like that? And maybe stargazing's not your thing, that's fine. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's taking a walk through the woods. Maybe it's fishing. Maybe it's sitting on the front porch or the back deck. Whatever it is, when's the last time you did that and nothing else? Like, left your phone inside the house or in the car and actually rested. Is it hard for you to remember? I imagine it's hard for most of us, and I get it. As we've talked about, necessary priorities, they're all around us, jockeying for our undivided attention, convincing us that to put them aside for a few moments and take a break means we're not being hardworking employees, good parents and spouses, or caring friends. But those are lies. It's when we don't prioritize rest, when we don't make room to connect with God regularly, and when we don't take a break from the grind, that we become less than we could be. We become less than we could be because we're denying our bodies, our minds, and our souls the restoration only God can provide. Let's take a look at Psalm 23 again, and this time, pay special attention to the relationship between the two sentences. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters, and He restores my soul. David is telling us through this beautiful word picture that under God's care, He has everything He needs. Therefore, He doesn't want anything else. He doesn't need anything else. The protection and provision and presence of the Good Shepherd is always nearby, and therefore, David can rest and be restored, as if he's lying down in green pastures or being led beside still waters. And it's in the use of the still waters imagery that David ties together the necessity of rest and connection with God. As you know, water is essential to life. We can't live without it, and similarly, we can't live the fullest lives possible without rest or being beside still waters, as David puts it. It reminds me, actually, let's do something together, wherever you are. Now, if you've never been here before, don't worry. It's not going to be weird. We're not going to get snakes out and wave them around. We're going to do that a little later. All right, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that at all. Seriously, though, wherever you're at, go ahead and sit up straight. If you're laying down on your couch watching this at home, or you're slouched a little bit in the seat you're in and in the big room, just straighten up for just a minute, and let's do something. All we're going to do is take a deep breath in and breathe it out. But before we do it, make sure you take as deep a breath as possible through your nose and hold it in for just a second before you breathe it out. And it's only one single breath, so why don't we just give it everything we got, all right? Okay, here we go. So make sure you're up straight, sitting up straight. Take a big deep breath in and breathe out. Did you feel that? Do you feel the energy in you right now? I mean, I literally got chills when I breathed out. Did that happen for you? Yeah, it blows my mind just how much different I feel after a single intentional breath in and out. Even just a few seconds of pausing and taking a moment to simply breathe has an effect on us. Now imagine what 10, 20, 30 minutes of intentional rest could do for you. What your undivided attention to the giver of life could provide you. What some restoration could bring to your soul. But how do we do this? I mean, in a hectic world that demands our attention, how do we make the space to get the rest we all need, the rest we were designed for? And to be clear, I'm not really talking about taking deep breaths, although we could all use that from time to time. More what I mean is making room in our lives for connection to God through rest. Well, first we need to start by reclaiming the time itself. Take back your most precious resource from the spaces in your life where you can, and set it aside for rest, and guard it from anything that would come try and take it. Reframe rest in your mind, not as weakness or missed opportunity. Rather, see it for what it really is. Necessary, vital, life-giving. You can be more intentional about this by following a formula that Pastor Brian Hughes taught me years ago that goes like this: a few minutes a day, a few hours a week, a few days every few months. A few minutes a day, a few hours a week, a few days every few months. What that means is make sure you're making some room every single day for at least a few minutes of rest and connection with God. This can be in the morning, right when you wake up. It can be before bed each night, or really any time that works for you. We all have different schedules, and of course that's fine. As long as it actually happens each day, that's what matters. Similarly, take time to rest for a few hours every week. Now, this can be an accumulation of the moments you've spent each day, or a single hours-long block of time, or a combination of the two. Again, it's going to look different for everybody, but what matters is actually making it happen. Finally, rest for a few days every few months. Now, this one can be the hardest to do because the thought of finding a few whole days in our schedules to rest seems completely impossible. But I think if you'll look, it's not that hard. And again, if you ever want to get to a place where you find real restoration for your body, your mind, and your soul, you need to make this a priority. Even if it's not a few days in a row, it can be one here, one here, one here. That's what matters. But you also need to be intentional. I mean, once you've set aside some time for rest, don't go in haphazardly. Have an idea of what you want it to look like. Decide on the activity you're going to do and actually do it. Rest and time with God, it comes in many forms. And as I said earlier, it doesn't look the same for each of us. And if you don't know what it looks like for you yet, that's okay. Talk to somebody and ask what they do. Or find one of the many helpful resources online and try something on there. In fact, Right now, you can find such resources on our social medias. We're going to add things there throughout the week to help you figure this out. So if you're lost, be sure to check there. And really, the point isn't a specific activity or the space you create. It's that you go in having planned what you're going to do with that time. Whether it's running or napping is more your speed, it's just be intentional. Finally, eliminate the distractions. Go somewhere quiet and make sure it stays quiet by leaving the distractions behind. Most notably, your phone. Yes, I know you might feel like you need it, but you don't. The world will continue to spin, the rivers will continue to run, and the sun will continue to shine if you don't look at your phone for a few minutes a day. I promise. Just leave it inside or in the car, not in your pocket. Take this same approach with anything else that might be a distraction for you and put it aside for these few intentional moments. Because there's nothing more detrimental to rest than something pulling you out of it, which is what distractions do. All of the things demanding your immediate attention rarely need it, so don't give it to them. Create your distraction-free environment and rest in it. Talk to God through prayer, worship, or reading and let Him speak to you. You can do it. You need to do it. Recently, I carved out a few moments one morning to rest, and in this particular case, it came in the form of sitting down and writing a song. It's rare I actually get to do this anymore, but when I do, I always feel like I connect with God because the songs I write are almost always meant for God. This particular tune ended up being about really the concepts that we've been talking about today as it relates to my own life. So I figured we could end our time with me playing it for you now, right here from the dock, where I've found much needed rest in my life. I hope this song reminds you that regardless of what's going on in your life right now, you can make space to rest. You have the capability to make room in your life to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. You have the ability to take a break from the grind and allow some of the stress and anxiety of always keeping up to melt away. You can slow down long enough to experience the soul-restoring power of Jesus in your life. A few moments a day, a few hours a week, and a few days every few months, resting and connecting with God. That's all it takes to restore your soul. I remember Grandpa used to tell me about life. Don't blink or it'll pass you by. I guess age really does make you wise. 'Cause now I'm older, and when I stare into my girl's big blue eyes, or watch my son learn how to smile, I try to keep my eyes open wide. 'Cause this world's got me fraying at the seams, and it tells me keep going, boy, chase your dreams. But I found all I needed here at the stream, so Lord, lead me by the quiet waters. If I'm honest, I can't get caught up in the light. That slowing down is wasted time, and soon I will get left behind. But here's the truth, going all the time might get you things, but never slowing down will cost you everything. So go on ahead, leave me behind, and I'll be fine. As this world's got me fraying at the seams, and it tells me keep going, Boy, chase your dreams, but I found all I needed here at the stream. So Lord, lead me by the quiet waters. Won't you come, won't you lead me? And if this world's got you fraying at the seams, that you don't have to keep going, come take a seat, come and see all you've needed here at the stream. Come sit with me by the quiet waters. Come sit with me by the quiet waters. Won't you sit with me by these quiet waters?
What a great message from Elijah. And that song he wrote, amazing. Now this week, let's work to reclaim the time, be intentional, and eliminate the distractions. Now you also have an opportunity to do those things for an extended period of time with the spiritual retreat that we talked about. So don't forget to sign up for that. We'll see you next week.